I actually first met David Abram, believe it or not, in a dream. I had read his books for many years as someone who worked in the environmental field and now is studying theology. I'm always looking for thinkers who can sort of bridge matter and spirit, and he's one of those thinkers. So I'd read his books for many years, and I one day had this dream, a very simple dream, that I was just walking in a forest and he was in front of me and I was following him, and I kind of had this sense he had something to teach me. And the next day, I said to Professor Stang, Charlie Stang, because I knew he knew David, I said, can you put me in touch with David? I just feel like I should, be in conversation with him. And Charlie said, well, wouldn't you happen to know David is going to be here in the fall? And I love that story because David, to me, is someone who precipitates magic. Like wherever he goes, he just sort of brings this enchantment along with him. So at the center, I co founded and co facilitate this plant consciousness reading group together with Natalia Schween. And the main way I interacted with David was through his participation in that group. He was such a gift in that conversation where we were exploring the ways in which plants can be said to sense and communicate and think and have awareness even, because he really bridged this divide between sort of an abstract conceptual awareness and an embodied practiced relationship with the natural world. So he could switch back and forth very easily between, really scrutinizing the text, but then always zooming out and saying, well, what does this mean to me if I'm walking through a forest? How do I relate differently to the leaves and the branches and what they're saying to me? And so he really enriched that conversation, helping us sort of bridge that divide that often exists in academia between sort of practice and conceptual understanding. I think David has helped me heal this deep Cartesian enlightenment legacy that I live with, which is to say, this sort of rupture between the mind and the body. David's work is completely centered on the sensuous and sort of this understanding that there is no understanding without experience. And I tend to be more of a conceptual person and a cerebral person. And so it was particularly special to be able to go out into the field and into the forest with David and go through these exercises where we would just sit, with moss or with a tree and really try to feel into the language of that particular being. And trust that as a source of knowledge, right? Because that source has been so discredited in the West, even though it's maintained within indigenous and animist and pagan traditions. So for me, he's been such a helpful mentor and teacher in terms of thinking about how rigorous thought doesn't just happen with the mind, it's in the body. So I've really just grown and trusting that way of knowing through his work. I was thinking about the kind of subtle everyday ways that David and his work has influenced me. And one of the phrases I keep returning to, which he would use when we were out in the field, in the forest, is this phrase, the many voiced silence. And I loved this phrase because we think of silence as a lack of sound. And when we really kind of sink into a space that we might on the surface call silence, we realize there are many voices in that space, whether that's the voices of birds or the voices of wind or the voices of water that are eroding rocks. And so then there are the voices of rocks. And so even on a day-to-day basis now, when I'm sitting in relative silence, it's always an invitation to examine, okay, well, who else is here? Like, what else is here? And that's such a subtle shift, but it's profound, I think. David's presence has just been evidence for how powerful, I think, and special the Center for the Study of World Religions is. That it can be responding to student interests, it can be responding to prescient issues that we're facing as a society, including the sort of severing of our relationship with the natural world. And so it's really a gift to have a place at HDS and at Harvard more generally that's able to bring in these really cutting edge thinkers who are able to contribute to student life as well as scholarship. So yeah, I think David's presence has been such a gift and an example of why the center is such a special place on campus.